Hello, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update video. In this video, we're going to talk about signs of hyperinflation and difficulties with the US dollar. All of these videos are meant to supplement the coming storm video that was a live presentation we did in Austin, Texas. There's a link to watch that video for free. If you haven't seen that, that's far more important than any of these updates. So I'd encourage you to go watch that for free. These videos are meant to just give you an update on what's been going on over the last few months, or a couple week, or however long it's been since I made the last video. Again, this one's going to be on hyperinflation and the US dollar. There's a scary thing. It might not sound scary to you, but it actually, if you watch historically economic things, whenever the Treasury Secretary of a country makes a comment like, "We will not devalue the dollar or the peso or whatever their currency is," that's usually what they do right before they start devaluing their currency. Well, Tim Geithner here in the last couple months came out and said, "We will not devalue the US dollar." Warning sign. Of course, we know what they're doing. They're printing billions and trillions of dollars, so we already know that, but it's a scary thing when he comes out and says it, because that's always what's said right before you see a big scary drop. China is desperately trying to buy up European bonds because they sell a lot of stuff to Europe, even more than they sell to the United States, and they don't want to see Europe collapse, so they're trying to do stopgap measures and buy up Portuguese bonds or whoever else is desperate for their need. I don't know that they can buy enough to save Europe. Goldman said the Federal Reserve will need to buy $4 trillion worth of assets in order to get the U.S. economy growing. So everyone was up in arms that the Fed just announced they were going to print $600 billion new dollars. Goldman Sachs says in their analysis the Fed is going to need to do $4 trillion more. So, you know, probably Ben Bernanke's planning that, but he doesn't want to tell people because we'll all fall out of our chairs. But that should kind of give you some warning. We have a printing addiction. The Fed says we have growth now. So in their reporting to us, in the minutes that they leak to us, they say, "Oh, we have growth, everything looks good, but we have a high tolerance for printing." And they basically said they're not going to stop printing anytime soon, and it would take something pretty massive in order to get them to stop printing. It's a pretty scary thing, because once a steamroller of hyperinflation starts going, it's just not an easy genie to put back in a bottle. You can't stop it as easy as they seem to think that they can. I'm going to get more into that, I think. We have a, let's see, so one of the scary things before their last big decision and QE2 was announced, they invited the primary dealers, which is the big banks, to tell them what they should do. That's a really scary thing. Even though the Federal Reserve's private, it's kind of considered part of our government, and they're just going out to these banks and saying, "What should our government policy be?" To me, that was a frightening thing. For one reason, banks actually like inflation. Inflation is very good for banks. Deflation is much better for you because it means the cost of things is cheaper for you. And so your money becomes more valuable and the cost of things becomes cheaper. That's a good thing for you. That's really bad for banks because they loan out money, and so they're in a kind of an opposite situation, and it's not good for them to have deflation. Inflation is very good because they get that money first and they get to spend it first before it loses its value. And so what are they going to recommend? You know, Europe's problems are really interesting. They desperately need austerity. They've been spending far too much money for far too long, and yet, so this is obvious because they have massive deficits and they can't keep borrowing the way they have. The bond market is drilling them now and charging more and more for their borrowing, and it's a dicey situation. So they need to reduce. The problem is, the people don't like having the free money that they've been getting reduced, and so people are rioting over there. So you have this massive tension, and of course, if they do drastically reduce these things, well, that's going to cause a severe recession, if not depression, in Europe, because all of a sudden the spending stopped that used to be there. It would take a while for the free market to replace that. One of two things is gonna happen. They're gonna have to print a lot of new money, which Germany is very against, or the whole European Union idea, the euro, is going to break up, which is really the best thing. That's what needs to happen. But because of pride, they do not want to do that. That would be best for every country, the weak ones and the strong ones. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but it's something drastic has to happen, and we're probably going to see that, some sort of conclusion to that in 2011. Let's see, Ron Paul will now have the authority to monitor the Fed and actually bring them in for questioning and things like that. So that's pretty exciting, because a lot of the shenanigans that they've been up to for so long, perhaps he can put a stop to. Multiple countries are imposing capital controls. So this is an interesting first warning sign. It's rather bizarre. In the past, countries always wanted money coming in, but now these countries, there's so much money being printed in the so-called first world, and yet the first world has dead economic growth, or bloated government bureaucracies that make nothing happen, that all these banks and people with capital, money's got to go somewhere, so it's flowing over to these emerging countries and causing massive inflation in those countries. So they're trying to do what they can to stop that money from coming in. Again, we talked about the currency war before, but that's early warning signs of a currency war heating up, and that's always bad for everybody's economy. And let's see, sorry, I've lost my place. Interest rates have moved much higher and are flashing a huge warning sign. So we've been talking about this for a while. We didn't see it for the first half of 2010, but we definitely started seeing it in the last few months. Interest rates have shot up, and if that continues, that's going to be a devastating thing you're going to feel very quickly. Inflation's picking up worldwide. I saw articles on China, Germany, England. I think I've seen quite a few more than that. Just about every country in the world is experiencing inflation. We're certainly seeing it in some areas, but we're not seeing it in other areas because we have a massive debt bubble bursting in this country, but it's coming here too. And you're certainly seeing it in your food prices and your gasoline prices and things like that, but it's going to be hitting everything soon, as it is in the rest of the world. Our government also likes to rig these numbers. Most of the governments of the world don't, and so their reporting is a little more honest on that. You see the numbers going up in every country in the world, and somehow mysteriously our CPI isn't going up. The Fed says this is pretty interesting. So before the Q2, or quantitative easing number 2, that was announced in the fall, they said that this would lower interest rates and that would be good for the economy. But what actually happened? The interest rates actually went up, and then they said that's a good thing because that shows growth. It should be a scary warning sign to you that the Federal Reserve is lying to us. They keep being caught again and again lying to us about what they're doing and what's going on. If they were honest and they had a rational explanation, that might give us some confidence that what they're doing and saying is correct and working. But when they say one thing before and the opposite happens, and then they tell you that's good too, that should make you really suspicious of what they're telling us, and perhaps they're hiding some really bad news that they just don't want you to know about because they're just hoping things will blow over. There's some very real things going on. We continue to tell you about them, but by the time most people are aware of them, it's going to be far too late to do anything about it. I'm going to take a break here at the end, call that part 1. Again, if you haven't seen the Coming Storm video, there's a link to watch that for free, and that's really important. I recommend you do that. If you have any questions for us, just reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and God bless you.